Alrighty, so this week we are going to be discussing Jason and the Argonauts. And while this isn't the oldest of these hero stories or by any means the most important, we are introduced to one of the scariest women of the ancient world, which is what we're going to be discussing women next week. And so it seemed very fitting to sort of get to introduce you to her, um, this week. So just a little bit of a backstory, a little bit of back information on Jason. So Jason, in the story of the Argo and the Argonauts, the crew of the Argo, we actually see versions of this. We have mentioned, or I should say, we have a mention of the Argo in Homer's Odyssey. So this is a story at least as old as Homer, although we don't have a surviving written account of the story of the Argonauts until the 3rd century BCE, which is the Argonautica by Apollonius of Rhodes. This is actually, if you are interested in reading this, there are great translations out there of it. It's actually quite interesting and a lot of fun. To read. But a lot of what we're going to talk about today sort of gives you, like I said, we're going to give you sort of the skeleton with some of the meat of the story here. One of the things that the book really points out, I think that it's important, is that by the time of Apollonius's portrayal of Jason, we see this even in Euripides' play The Medea, where Jason is sort of a very weak character. He's sort of, even Jason's like death is just really kind of just a terrible way for a Greek hero to die. Spoilers, I'm sorry, but basically the mast of the Argo breaks and hits him on the head and he dies. Just a very unfulfilling way as opposed to Heracles, who builds his own funeral pyre and lights it on fire and climbs on top of it. Sorry to jump ahead, but Jason, like I said, so by the time of the Argonauts is written, it sort of like has this almost like negative portrayal of Jason. But Jason is definitely meant to be a very prototypical Greek hero. As like the book mentions, when the archaic telling of the story of Jason, he definitely would have been more heroic and sort of thus this sort of like feeble hero that we see. So we begin with the Golden Fleece. So the story behind the Golden Fleece is we actually have the king Athamas, who has these two children, Phrixus and Hele. With his first wife, after the death of his first wife, he remarries a woman named Ino, who basically doesn't like her stepchildren. So we sort of get this motif of the evil stepmother a little bit right here, trying essentially to get rid of her stepchildren. She devises this plan where she brings about essentially a famine. When we talked about the Delphic Oracle, when Athamas sends his delegation to Delphi, she has bribed the Delphic Oracle to say that Athamas has to sacrifice Phrixus in order to end this pestilence, this famine that's going on in the land. Phrygius clearly doesn't want to sacrifice his son. And in order, he sort of refuses to do so. And then what happens is we have this ram, which was given to Nephili, who is Phrixus and Hele's mother, which basically they ride this winged golden ram east to, and it's actually east to Colchis, which is in the eastern part of the Black Sea. We'll show you a map here in a minute. While they're flying away, Hele actually falls. It's where she falls that the Hellespont, which is in, well, it's what separates, like in modern day Turkey, what separates the European side of Turkey from sort of the Middle Eastern Asian side of Turkey. Phrixus arrives in Colchis and he stays on the land. When he lands, and of course this is very, this is common, he sacrifices the ram when he lands in Colchis, and he gives the fleece to King Aeetes. We'll come back to King Aeetes a little bit later. So he has this gift of this golden fleece, this golden ram fleece. In Colchis, the fleece is actually hung in this sacred grove of Ares and is guarded by this serpent that never sleeps. So we have the fleece there in the background with the serpent swallowing a man alive with Athena there. I'm not really sure why Athena is there. I'm here in the foreground. Can't remember. Anyway. So the fleece is, again, given to Aeetes. This is a prized possession, and so he does everything he can to guard it. All right, so we're going to fast forward and talk about Jason. So Jason is the son of Aeson, who is the king of Iolcus. His father is deposed by his, how are they related? His half-brother, Pelias. And after that happens, Aeson and his wife Polymede have the son Jason. Pelias, afraid of what Jason could do and believing that Jason could overthrow him, he wants Jason killed. Aeson and Polymede lie and say that Jason was stillborn and that he is no longer alive. Pelias believes this, and Jason is sent away to be educated by the centaur Chiron. And actually, if you've seen Disney's Hercules, this is the Phil from the movie Hercules. This is actually who he is supposed to sort of like, Philoctetes is sort of who he's supposed to represent. Actually, we'll talk about who Philoctetes is later. But Chiron is this trainer of heroes, basically. The trainer of heroes. So he trains Jason until he grows into a man when he can come back to Iolcus and claim his throne. Polias, of course, and you'll see this theme come up, especially as we deal with heroes and the idea of kingship. Kings want to retain their kingship. They want to stay. Who doesn't want to stay king if you're king? And so they'll do sketchy things, or what, and not in many cases, anything they can do to stay king. Polias, worried that he might be overthrown, sends his embassy, sends a messenger to the Delphic oracle asking if he is safe. He's warned to beware the man with one sandal. Beware the man with one sandal. Beware the man with one sandal. So one day, Jason, on his return to Iolcus, comes to the river Anaris, and there he meets a woman who needs help crossing the river. He offers her his help, putting her on his back and puts her on his back and carries her across the river. While he's crossing the river, if any of you have ever walked across the river, they can get muddy. Especially in sandals, of course, even though walking sandals, of course, are different. Anyway, he's crossing the river, and one of his sandals comes off in the mud. Jason basically goes to Polias, demanding his throne back. Polias, seeing Jason with only this shoe, knows now what that prophecy means. So, and this is more complicated than this. So Polias actually tricks Jason, so he doesn't let on who he is. He sees Jason with the one shoe on. He doesn't know who he is, or he doesn't let on who he is, and he gives hospitality to Jason. He basically tells Jason that he needs to basically come up, basically go get this. Basically, he gives him the impossible task. Go get this golden fleece. Oh, so once it's revealed that he's dealing with Polias here, Polias gives him the impossible task, the impossible journey for kingship. Jason decides to put together, or he goes and he has a ship built. The ship, the Argo, named after the man who built it. This is important, the man who built it, whose name is Argus. He builds the ship. And it's just it's a great ship. And so Jason sends out word, we need people to man the ship. We're going on a journey. We need all of the best people. And all of the best people of this generation, all of the heroes of this generation, come to his call and come to go get the Golden Fleece. We have Orpheus, the greatest musician. We're going to learn about Orpheus. We're going to talk about him later in the semester. Heracles comes. We're going to talk about him a little bit later in the semester. Theseus, we're going to talk about him a little bit later in the semester. Peleus, Achilles' father. Telamon, who's the father of Ajax Telamonius, which is Ajax, the great Ajax. Oileus, the father of Ajax the Lesser. Castor and Pollux, the brothers of Helen and Clytemnestra. What we have is all of the great heroes of the Trojan War. It's their parents that are going on this expedition. This is the great journey. This is the great battle to be fought, the great adventure to have before the Trojan War. So they set off on their journey. We're going to keep it here for a few minutes. They set off on their journey. We're not going to talk about all of the things they encounter on the early journey. One that is important is what happens on the island of Limnos. Here you have Queen Hypsipyle, who is the granddaughter of Dionysus and Ariadne, who is the queen of the island of Limnos. Now, the island of Limnos at this point are all women. All women women are the only inhabitants of the island of Limnos. So when Jason and the Argonauts land, the women of the island decide that all of the heroes of Greece are the perfect candidates to have children with. And so they seduce the Greek heroes and convince them to stay on the island for an exact amount of time. It's not until, weirdly enough, Hercules reminds, and you'll see when we talk about Hercules why it's weirdly enough, that's Hercules who in one of his adventures is said to have slept with 100 women in one night or something like that. So Hercules, who's never shy about sleeping with women, reminds them they need to get on their journey, to get on with it, basically. And this is something we're going to see, that you'll see in, often see in series 2, and we can talk about this actually a little bit more, or maybe I'll expand on this when we talk about women a little bit more. But very often on these hero journeys, on these journeys, you're often going to find that women there are women who help and aid sort of men on the journey. There are women that are put into the story to sort of hinder the hero from their journey. And Hypsipyle is definitely one of meant to hinder. She is like Dido in the Aeneid, or Calypso in the Odyssey. Hypsipyle does have 2 children. She does have 2 children with Jason. Their names are Eunaeus and Thoas. Eunaeus and Thoas. You need to remember those. They leave. Limnos, and here they go on a couple. They have a few more adventures. I'm just going to kind of skip over them. Hercules leaves the mission after um, his squire and lover um, goes missing, and he refuses to go any further on the journey. We have a boxing match between Polydeuces and the giant Amicos. This is important because Polydeuces is said to have been a great boxer. Um, and it's, and I guess I should have maybe highlighted some more. When Jason chooses the heroes, they're all chosen for specific reasons, whether they were great warriors, uh, great with a sword, great with a spear, fast at running. These are all sort of like champions of different aspects of athletics and warfare. Like I said, it's Polydeuces who is the boxer, the champion boxer. So when he's challenged to this boxing match, he wins, sort of, and it's in sort of one of these like last ditch effort, like this is going to be the final blow, and he dodges a swing by Amicos, delivering the last blow against Amicos. Polydeuces, of course, is, and I should mention this. I mean, we'll get into this when we talk about Helen and Clytemnestra, but when Polydeuces is actually sort of the equivalent of he's in the egg with. Pretty sure he's in the egg with Helen when their mother gives birth to two eggs. Polydeuces and Helen are together, meaning that they are the child of Zeus, and Castor and Clytemnestra are together. Another one that's a little bit more important because here we have the blind prophet that leads, and sort of pay attention to sort of these themes you're seeing. So we have the blind prophet that tells them how to finish their journey, who is Phineas. So Phineas is this blind prophet who every day food is laid out in front of Phineas. And the harpies, these winged monsters, come down every day and snatch the food away from him and to spoil his dinner. When the Argonauts encounter him, they're told, he tells them, if you can prevent the harpies, you can trap the harpies and prevent them from taking my dinner, my meal, then I will help you. The two heroes, Zetes and Callias, basically set up these nets and are able to catch the harpies to prevent them from stealing this meal. And because of this, Phineas agrees to help them, telling them how to get to Colchis. And what he tells them is vitally important. Because so actually, if you look here in the bottom, you can actually see the pont part of the Hellespont. So the Hellespont is this basically as the Mediterranean moves in through this space here. That's the Hellespont, that's the strip on the left, and then the smaller strip is what's today the Bosphorus. So this is actually the Bosphorus. The city of the modern day of Istanbul is on the two sides of the Bosphorus here. The Hellespont is closer to like where Troy, ancient Troy is. So the Bosphorus here, known then as the Symplegades. I can never say this. The Symplegades. And basically, we have these two rocks that are constantly crashing into each other. Anytime a ship attempts to go through the Symplegades, they crash together, destroying the boat, preventing anyone from entering or exiting the Black Sea. What Phineas tells them is that as they approach these crashing rocks, so I should mention the rocks don't move. The rocks don't move except when a ship is trying to go through them. He tells them that if they release a dove and it's able to fly through successfully, then they should attempt to make this journey. The bird does make it through, and so Jason and his men attempt to sail through, to row through. And I should mention, they're down oarsmen, and not only down some oarsmen, one of these is Hercules. They're not at full speed here, of course. And yet they are able to make it through. And once conquered, they can't again ever crash. All right. So, like I was mentioning, so once they get through the Symplegades, they are never able to close again. So once they are able to make it through the Bosphorus, through the Symplegades, they have smooth sailing all the way to Colchis on the Black Sea. So here we see where Colchis is in comparison to the Bosphorus. So again, we have the Hellespont right here, the Bosphorus right here, and they're able to sail here to Colchis. So once they arrive in Colchis, they are met with some, we have to remember guest rights and things of that nature. They're met as friends and guests, but of course, Aeetes sees Jason as someone who has come to steal his most prized possession and something that is bringing prosperity to his land. And so Jason and his men are not exactly seen as welcome guests. Aeetes basically, knowing that the tasks are impossible, says that he is willing to give Jason the Golden Fleece if he is able to complete a few tasks. Again, impossible tasks. So if you remember, Pelias gives him the impossible task of collecting the fleece. He knows how impossible it is. Aeetes gives Jason the impossible task. And this is something we're going to see happen with Greek heroes. This is what makes them heroes, because they're given the impossible task and they're able to overcome it in some way. So how is Jason able to overcome the impossible task? With the help of Medea. He has no way on his own to accomplish this task. He doesn't know what he's going to do. There's no way to do this. What does he got to do? So what is Aeetes telling us to do? You're going to have to yoke a pair of fire-breathing bulls, plow a humongous field, plant dragon's teeth in this field, and then once those dragon's teeth are planted, they're going to grow armed men that you have to fight and defeat all on your own. So given the impossible task, Jason doesn't know what he's going to do. But luckily, Jason has found the um, the affection of Aeetes' daughter, Medea. So let's talk about Medea for a second. So like I said, Medea is the daughter of Aeetes, and she falls in love with Jason. Now, I should mention, what is so special with Medea is she is a priestess of Hecate, and she knows not only the secrets to defeating the bulls and the armored men, but she also has other powers. We're going to see this later on with Medea. She gives Jason a special ointment, a salve that will cover his entire body and basically make him flame retardant. So the flames, the bulls can't burn him. He's invulnerable. In later versions, and actually I'm going to, if I can find a copy of Euripides' Medea to put on the Moodle page, I will. Because I think Medea might be good to read, especially going into next week's chapter or next week's discussion of women. But in later versions, Medea actually is said to have killed this dragon that we'll see later on. So we have Medea with these sort of special powers. She's later called things like a witch, a sorceress, all of these different things. So she gives him, she gives him the salve. What's Jason able to do? Because he has the salve and he's now given her the promise to marry him, he's able to plow the field so the bulls don't burn him. He's able to sow the teeth. Medea tells him how to defeat the men. He throws a boulder in the midst of them. They start fighting one another, and Jason's basically able to pick them off one at a time as they fight one another. So he's now completed the impossible task, again, only through the help of Medea. Remember, so I'm drawing your memory back. Of course, the fleece is guarded by this serpent. So we haven't even gotten to the serpent that's guarding the fleece yet. This is just the task Aeetes gives him. And of course, I should mention, I don't have that slide here anymore, but Aeetes is in no way ready to give that golden fleece up. He gives the task to Jason, knowing it's an impossible task. But even when he accomplishes it, he refuses to give the golden fleece up. Medea, again, helps Jason overcome the snake by basically putting this, like mesmerizing the snake or hypnotizing the snake and putting it to sleep. Jason is then able to snatch the fleece off of the tree, and he, with Medea and his men, load the Argo and escape from Colchis. Aeetes and the Colchins give chase. Medea comes up with a way to basically keep her father and the Colchins from catching up to them. She actually chops up her little brother, Apsyrtus, and throws the pieces of him behind the Argo. When his father sees the pieces of his son, he stops. When he sees this, he collects the pieces, and the Argo is able to get through. Of course, get back through Bosphorus, back through the Hellespont, and back into the Mediterranean. So here is actually a voyage. So we actually see them leave Iolcus, go to Limnos, sail through the Hellespont, some of these minor journeys. They go through the crashing rocks. They go to Colchis. They sail back. No, I'm pretty sure they sail this way, but that's okay. I'm selling this. The map has them sailing this river. This is according to Apollonius. They go up these rivers. They come back down. And finally, because this is all less important, they finally arrive at Iolcus. There, Jason gives the fleece back to Pelias, who still refuses. Actually, there is one thing that I wanted to bring up. That's why I put the map on there. It's while they're on this trip that they come to the island of Aiaia, number 10 here, where here they interact with Circe. And it's there that Circe purifies Jason and Medea of killing her brother, which essentially is what's needed to allow Jason and Medea to return home. So once purified, they're finally able to return back to Iolcus, where now they give the fleece to Pelias. He, of course, refuses to honor his agreement. And this is sort of part of it, but Medea devises a trick to basically get the throne for Jason. So Pelias has 3 daughters, and she shows them a trick where she has this cauldron, and she says, this cauldron can turn anything that is old young. All you gotta do is chop it up, throw it in there, and it'll come out as a child. And so through trickery, she basically chops up an old lamb, an old sheep, throws it in there, and out pops a new one. Pelias, who's an old man, afraid of wanting to become young again, his daughters chop him up, throw him into the cauldron, and all it makes is a Pelias soup. That's gross. Sorry, gross. But Pelias, of course, does not emerge from the cauldron a new man. So we have Medea and Jason getting expelled from Iolcus because of this. They flee from Iolcus. They end up in Corinth. They end up finding refuge in Corinth. And we're gonna sort of end this part of the story now, because it's when we talk about the women, we're gonna pick up with Medea in Corinth. We're going to pick up with Medea and Jason in Corinth. We'll sort of talk about, we're going to talk about what happens to Medea. We're going to talk about what happens to Jason, sort of get to Jason's death in that discussion of women. So what are some of the big takeaways from this? One is really sort of, we start to see the stages of this hero's journey, this thing that, of course, that Joseph Campbell starts to see, these common elements that heroes go through on their journey. We will see several parallels between Jason's journey in the Argo, to Odysseus's journey, to other heroes' journeys also. That's one takeaway. Two, a second takeaway, and this is sort of like going into the discussion for next week. But Medea, one of the things that we'll start to see with Medea is people start to fear Medea. People start to fear Medea. Why? Because she is a powerful woman who has abilities that men in this world can't quite understand and don't have access to. We're going to sort of talk about this idea of the fear, and so like sort of how women, when they are powerful, are often called witches, or witches or sorceresses. Medea is not exempt from that. And then third, really, we want to see what's happening in this generation of heroes. What's going on with the generation that predates the Iliad, that predates the great heroes of the Iliad. All right, so you do have a quiz this week, so go ahead and take that quiz over Jason and the Argonauts. If you're also, I have posted on the Moodle page a link to my server that has the 1964 the 1963 film, Jason and the Argonauts. It's a lot of fun. It's an early stop motion film. It's really good, actually, surprisingly quite good. So I'll actually have that on there also, and I'll try my best to post a version of the Medea if you're interested in that. So with that, I'm going to conclude. Hope that you have a great week, and I will catch you next time.